So, welcome everybody. It's this Senate Committee on Agriculture. It's Wednesday, January 10th, and to start the morning off, we have Dan Smith with us, who's going to give us an update on the virtual fencing.
Yeah.
And so we'll introduce ourselves.
Yep, Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District. Yeah, nice to see you.
Nice to see Brian.
Good to see you, Brian Cappy, Bennington District.
Yeah, and Bobby Starr from North Shore Orleans County, and Linda Lehman, our staff person with us. Welcome, Dan Smith. So, before we get started, Richie Westman won't be with us this morning. That wind blew part of his roof off the barn, and so he had to hurry home this morning to try to get a carpenter contractor lined up to get that put back on before other damage happened. And on top of that, he didn't have any power. So he actually is getting a double whammy. I guess Dan will turn it over to you, and it was kind of exciting last year.
Yeah.
Doing this project and setting up the pilot, and you could just kind of give us an overview of what has transpired since last June, I guess.
Okay.
Go from there.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bobby. I put together a PowerPoint to show what we did this summer. We had one unqualified success with the equipment. It's really exciting. It's a good word for it. And we've had some challenges. I put together that I was hoping to have my own. I used the no fence kind of as a sales pitch last time, and I now have a video, but I can't. Linda and I've got it now that I can show the PowerPoint and no fence, but I can't get the video in. But I can show you the picture. It gives you a little sense of in the field. And if you were going to come to our field demonstration in October, and I'll explain what happened with that. That's the big challenge. So, success and challenge is the nature of the beast with new technologies. And as a non-tech person, I'm good. I'm a carpenter, and I'm good with old-fashioned, what are now old-fashioned tools, hammers and circular saws, table saws. I'm good with that. I would like to get into the table saw that has the auto stop. Right. It's too much money, and so I still soldier along here. So thank you as always for your understanding. Okay, so just 2 seconds of background on the Institute. We're not just trying to do virtual fencing. We're really looking for tools that promote the improved performance of smaller scale farms. Roger Albee kind of put me up to this. It'd be 3 years this spring. So the idea was to concentrate on tech for smaller farms, and then tech both for finance and environment, but also to confront squarely climate change, recognizing what's coming. So to improve smaller farms' capability in the end to combat climate change. And that's the larger mission, the Institute. So then the idea is to go look for tools that can promote that mission. So you're in the established tools that, as we know in the Northeast, Europe is doing lots of things and we're behind. Unfortunately, out west in dairy, in the Midwest to a lesser extent, but more in the West, there are tools that are employed, and I would put robots in that category. I've been around a little bit in the last year, and we're still struggling with robots. Too expensive, they don't work, people use them, they take them out, they're mad, all that stuff.
Robotic milkers.
Yeah, robotic milkers, but not just robotic milkers, but yeah, focusing on the robotic milkers. In the Midwest, smaller scale operations, 200 and 300 cows, starting to use robots, and they're working. So we're missing something, and I spent more time on virtual fencing than I thought I would this year. But I want to do some research. Why is that? Why are we kind of a pocket here in the Northeast? I think it's the industry is under so much distress that there's no tolerance at all to work with it, and all of our support networks are also under stress. So that's established, and then the early stage tools are in the prove out period, and that's what virtual fencing is. So it's kind of a combination in that it's basically been proved out in Europe, but it's in the pilot stage in the United States. So it's a nice place to land. It's got a 10-year history of use in Europe that you can fall back on. We're not in anywhere the beta stage. We are here, and we're the first test in Vermont. So it's our first. Do the research. Now we're doing the on-farm research and development to see if it works. I'm working on a program so that if it works, the farmers will have assistance financially in buying the equipment, and then we do collaboration with other organizations and outreach through education, and all of that started this fall. So good place because we had one really good success. So you folks came in right when I was trying to get money out of the Dairy Business Innovation Center. I'd gotten the funding's down the bottom. I had some money, startup money from Cree, to get started on basically one farm. DBIC, a little bit to my surprise, they turned me down the first time. I thought they were going to turn me down again, but they gave me some money right about the same time. The legislature gave me some money, so that allowed me to gear up. And then with that momentum, the Vermont Low Income Trust for Electricity, VLIGHT, which was created as a part of the shutdown, I think, of Vermont Yankee. There was a pot of money created to promote assistance to make electricity more available to low income folks, and some set aside for innovation. So I got approached and asked if given what we're doing with the utilities, they wanted in. So it's good. So they put some money up. That allowed me to craft a really pretty solid pilot. So we have in Vermont, in Vermont we have 3 cattle farms, and we have 2 utilities and 1 ski area. So the cattle farms is grazing in the field, relatively uncomplicated. The utility vegetation management is more complicated. With the utilities, we're going to piece off a section of transmission line and put goats in there with the collars, and also a solar array up with Vermont Electric. And then the ski area, both because we're trying to do some geographic diversity in the state, and also because the Mountain Ops folks have a connection to a grazer, as the way Vermont works. So we ended up, we're working with Magic Mountain. I was in between Magic, Stowe, and Mad River, and Magic popped up. So good for diversity, geographic, spread this out. So 1 ski area, 2 utilities, 3 beef farms, and then DBIC adds 2 main dairy farms. So 5 total cattle farms and 2 utilities. That's essentially the project that the legislature's behind. 2 growing seasons, 23, 24. So we're right in the middle of the pilot now. So just a little bit back to the way the system worked, and like I said, I will get to the point of having so
of the 8 different places, how many did you actually get?
on this last year, 4.
Or,
Yeah.
Where are the farms, Jim?
The beef farms in Hardwick,
Okay.
the, we got 2 dairy farms. One is in Maine, two in Maine, obviously. One is, they're both kind of north and west of Augusta, going heading towards the coast. One farm is in Wells in Vermont. We haven't figured out we've had some issues finding the other Vermont farm. The real turmoil in our state, real turmoil. I mean, it's really, so
well, they go from one crisis to another.
so we will, so that's the roster. And that one other farm, I think we've got a handle on who it will be, but I'm not totally sure yet. We've still got enough time. Okay, but I get to that when I get to the farms. So if you remember, it creates a virtual line that the animals get first a sound and then a shot. So then,
Are we supposed to be seeing something here?
oh yeah, you are.
No,
I wasn't sure.
I was looking at it through the reflection.
Yeah, I was too.
No, Linda.
It was kind of small.
I'm sorry, Ken, I
No,
didn't know
no,
whether
don't
I.
be silly.
You need to go back. Are you, get out of. Go back to sharing.
Yeah. So you think I gotta stop?
Go ahead and put the other one on. Your slideshow.
My slideshow. Does that come up?
Well, you have to first, push.
Well, I don't want to share the slideshow.
Oh, you want to share the video?
Yeah.
Well, then all you have to do is push share.
There we go. Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I remember
sorry.
this. I remember this, yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, so. And this, it works really good with the video I've got, but I don't quite get it yet. Sorry, you guys are the beta. So that's the basic reaction. Same deal, right? There's the farmer in the corner there.
Yep.
So what I can report, this is the way it's represented. I've seen it work, and that's what I wanted to show you guys in the fall. So their website's really good. That's what the equipment looks like. This is that's the transmitter, the battery, everything's in there. It's hung. This goes around the neck with a chain, and that's the charging equipment. But that's the guts of it. That's all it is. It's like and it's about the size of a bell. I should have brought one in. I could have brought a collar, and that would have been too smart. So then over here, let's see if it works. So this is dynamic too, but you can set those boundaries, and that shows where the animals are. So that's what you're doing with your phone.
So is that an actual?
Yeah, that's an actual application. I'm going above my skis here. Mess it up, guys. Okay, I'll get enough time. Tell you what, let me show you on the phone how it works. So as the owner of the collars, I'm the primary user. So I have the app on my phone, and then I share the app with the farmer, and he manages it from his phone. And but because I'm on the app, I get all of the signals. So this is where he moved the animals. These are all individual pastures. So over the summer, he moved the animals all these times, 2-3 times a week. And every time I moved them, I could follow. And then when I can't show because they're not in the pasture now, so it's real time. But I get like that picture that shows those circles, shows where the animals are. So you can see them inside the boundaries. And then when they leave, I get an alert, middle of the night, whatever it is, I get an alert.
And
So,
there's no picture showing right now, it's just,
yeah, okay. So, yes. So it worked the way he described, the way No Fence described. You have your phone, you plot the location of the fence line, and then you implement that, and then the animals. So this is my picture. So you see the line there, right? They're right up to the line. We're basically
I see them in a line, but I don't see the
Right.
line.
exactly where's the fence, right?
They don't look too happy either.
No, they know if they go any
Yeah.
further, they're
And that's it. So this is, and I apologize that I don't have this so I can show you, but I was standing with the herder, and they're about, I don't know where that wall is to me. So I'm here, that's the wall, and the wall is the line. And so there's 60 cows. They came down the hill to us, and she was programming while they were coming. So what Ben figured out after some trial and error was that when you move them, you got to move the water. So the better way to do it is to go out and program and move the water, and the animals acclimate to all of that at the same time. So instead of having to move the fence, move the water, you're just moving the water. So it took 10 minutes. You're not moving them very far. So and during that 10-minute time, it programs. So 60 cows, like half of them programmed before they got down the hill. About 10 of them, about 5 of them came over to say hello. They were pretty happy. They weren't discontent. So like that one who's leaning away a little bit, you can see the collar, came over to, say hello. And the others are kind of milling around, lining up. And that one's on the wrong side of the line. And you hear this weird sound, and that animal goes just like in the movie, gets in line, just like that. And there's a couple others of them, and it's not, because it's a sound, they don't like it, but it's not bad. They just say, okay, that's their line. And what I got out of it is that it's not like when you watch a cow run into the fence, get smacked, and that's what they're reacting to. They get the sound and they recognize it. So it's a learned behavior. That the smack is a learned behavior, and then they know they're going to stay 2 feet away from the fence, and then they've got to figure out their way without this, with a manual fence. You watch animals figure out when they can go through and when they can't. Some of them say, I'm never going through, and others are like, okay, I get it. You open the fence, I can go through. And it's learned. That's what they're doing with this. They're figuring it out. It's not really it's a more easy for them system, because they get a sound. And the shock deal, so this is pretty good. So if you look, it says there's the boundary, and you have an audio zone. So I think it's between in a meter and 2 meters, so between 3 and 6 feet that they're working through. And if they get too close, you see the color grades, the sound goes up. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening. So, and they learn that too. So if there's a reason that they need to go, they'll go. And it's not enough of shock to knock them down. And as we talked about, they don't get a shock on the way back. So if they go over the line for whatever reason, and over the summer I watched, a few cows would leave and then come back, they just come back. And that's a big difference. Instead of they bust through the fence. And
Because most cows, they like to be together. So, you always see them pretty well bunched up. There may be one or two that have got a problem that don't bunch up. It's a little bit like humans. But for the most part, they like to be together and
Right.
and they don't stray off much.
No, that's
The
it.
bulk of them.
And with 60, there's a couple that'll stray a little bit.
Yeah.
And he had one that he just sent down the road. It wasn't, there wasn't any point. And so, and one died, and unlike normally, where you don't know where it is with the collar, it wasn't moving, and he could see that. And after a day, he said something's wrong, and so he could see that, in real time on his phone. And then he could go out in the field and find it. You have to go looking for it because he located it.
Right on the phone.
Yeah. So really useful for that. So the one time they took off, one time this summer,
They all took
they
off.
all took off, all of them. So, and I was watching too. And so they all took off and they didn't come back. So I'm watching and I texted Ben and I said, what's going on? He said, I'm going to find out. So he calls me up and he says that somewhere in the fencing area, he had a gate, and the gate adjoined the rail trail. Some I don't know if it's a rail trail, but some bike path that is it commingled with his land. And a couple mountain bikers went by, opened the gate for reasons he doesn't understand. And the cows took off out after the mountain bikers. So they went for a stroll with the mountain bikers, and then they stopped, fortunately. So by the time Ben got there were the 2 or 3 mountain bikers surrounded by 60 beef cows. But because he could track them, he knew exactly where they were. He just went to find them, led them back, no big deal. As opposed to, gone and who knows what, right, Bobby? Just gone. So that he was super happy with that.
If a cow doesn't want to be found, they know how to hide them.
So then the other really, and I think probably the number one, other than it works, he was able to manage his cows, and he figures he saves an hour a day with this, by not having to take the fence down and put it back up. So, he's all in on that. Then the other thing is, obviously we had those 2 absolute torrential rainstorm events last summer. And normally in his pasture, there are a couple areas that are really wet that the cows would have mucked up horribly. So he was able to establish an exclusion zone and keep them out of those areas. And that worked, as we hoped it would work, in the sense that he was able to do that without going out,
In the rain or prior to.
just sitting in his office and said, I'm going for it.
That work.
Yeah. And I prompted him, to try that because that's really what Cree's interested in. So,
Well,
so that's,
they do an awful job in a little wet zone real quick, because they drop in with their hoofs and up comes the sod, and then the next time it runs away on them.
exactly. So I think that that's potentially the most direct beneficial use for Vermont. That's my guess.
That, and now we can see the whatever transmitter or whatever.
Yeah.
That picture real good.
So that's how we loaded them, how we installed them. Just put them in a containment, to give shots and the rest of it.
Now,
Put the ear tags on.
did you lose any of those over the summer? Did they break the chain and?
One, the first day running around the barnyard, just one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem with the equipment, that the basic function of the equipment. you wonder, they swing.
Yeah,
Yeah. And there's a little bit of damage on them, but you can see why they don't work in a barn, because if they're stirred up a little bit and you turn a corner fast and it whips and hits something, that would work. But out in the field, no issues. So that, I think it's a limitation in their equipment that it doesn't work with milking cows, right? It's only with grazing animals.
now the green strip on top,
Yeah.
is that what picks up the sun?
No, I should have brought the collar. The solar collector is on either of the flat sides of the box. So it's here.
Yeah, but how the heck does the sun hit down under their neck?
I guess, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think the sun is that one angle, that their neck is cutting the sun off that much. I don't think never heard that as a problem.
No, that's.
Yeah, the solar charge did not work enough to keep them charged through the whole season, which was an issue. So this is the results of the summer. And then back to the question of where the farms are. So Ben's farm is Snug Valley Farm. If you shop at the co-op here, his meat is in the co-op. He sells beef and pork. It's not organic, but it's grass-based farm, really well-run operation. And so his farm, basically, I would say an unqualified success. As I said before, he really thinks big improvement for labor. I think, I said about the water quality is the #1 for Vermont, but I think the labor efficiency, I think is really, really good. Yeah. So between now and the spring, Kimberly and I are going to start crunching through with him to sketch out what that really looks like. What is an hour? He figured it would save him $8,000 right off the top for his labor savings. And then he's, the other piece is that because you're not using it on being out in the field, picking up posts and wire, you can do something else. And that's a big deal. So, so how that tracks out, we get on more farms this summer, so we have more data and see what that is like. I think it will prove to be a valuable improvement to the farm. Whether it's cost effective, given the cost, that's what we got to figure out. He thinks it will be, but we got to figure that out.
So that's my question, I guess, Dan. Does the farmer buy this equipment and then it's his or hers forever? Is there a monthly charge to keep using it?
Yeah.
So it's more of a rental?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So if you take the institute out of the equation, farmer buys directly from No Fence. It's $300 a column. Okay, for the equipment, and there's a subscription charge, to run the software, and the subscription charge is monthly. It appears that it would be something on the order of $8 a month per animal, so it's not a big additional charge. There's some additional cost to the chargers and batteries, and what we've got to figure out is that if you use it intensively, which gives you the labor savings, then you may not be able to rely on it lasting the whole summer, and you've got to bring the animals in and recharge. And if you do that, then you probably need to buy more batteries, so you can just bring them in, take the collar off, swap the batteries out, and get them right back out. So that's what I got to figure out. I got to run some numbers and see. My sense is, and the other piece, how long does it last, right? So they're representing they're good for 5 years, and they think they're good for 10 years. I'm not going to know that, but I can run the numbers on both of that, and then get a picture of the cost effectiveness of doing that. So that'll be the fall. I'll have more farms this summer and more indication of the use. So I don't have any doubt that it will provide a labor savings, but if the whole purchase amount is on the farmer, it may not be cost effective. So you got to figure that out. So the way I set this up is the Institute bought the collars. And so Ben got it for nothing for the first year, no risk, no nothing. He wants to buy it. So what I'm trying to work out is a low interest loan. We're back to the harvest or silos, Bobby, that you and I did. I don't want to go in the loan business. I don't want I don't want to do that. But you can see why there's an appeal for farmers to do that.
There, with all the grants that the Innovation Center puts out, from the federal thing.
Yeah.
There ought to be something there that could be set up. Congress will send them 8 million, 5 million, 20 million.
Well, what I'm trying to do, since I own this first lot, right, I could just give it to the farmers.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to do is set up a revolving loan fund so that I sell them these, they pay me back for these so I can buy another set. That's what I'm trying to set up.
So,
And with the interest rates, it cuts both ways. When interest was, nothing, then it was doable to provide farmers low interest, but nobody was making any money on it. But so now I've got some venture capital folks are moving into the agriculture space, as they call it, but on the larger size.
yeah.
So I'm in, we're tough,
So-
but they're sniffing because there's money to be made. So they're sniffing.
What about, like, we put tons of money into water quality, soil health, carbon capture. I mean, there should be
Yeah.
something there that we could have a set aside for low
Well,
interest or.
That's great. If we could follow up on that, because like I said, I don't think there's any doubt that, all the concern that's been raised over the years about animals getting into sensitive water areas, this is, I don't want to say solution, but it's clearly a tool that will work. So Cree has given me another small grant to do a water absolute, more sensitive, more targeted water trial. So we're going to do that this summer. We're looking for a location that really serves the purpose of a real demonstration. This is a sensitive water area, and if we fence the animals out, we're going to get this improvement. So it's an add-on. It's in addition to what I'm doing. I'm going to do one water targeted project this summer.
Is that through A&R or?
No, just the Linalac Foundation. Yeah, just that the Linalac Foundation primary focus in the environment is water quality and runoff into the lake. So, and runoff from the animals. So.
How do you test for like the enhanced water quality or improved soil health? Do you have to do ground tests for soil health?
Yeah. So for water quality, that's we're dealing with non-point source. So whether we can show that there is a tested reduced runoff, I think that may be over my pay grade. What I can show is that the animals are kept out of that area for sure. That'll be able to show. And whether the science goes from there, that's too. But I think that's maybe what we can talk about. We can come up with some kind of so it's over time, and that's the issue with the soil health too, right? So the ag agronomy, I guess, of improved soil health from improved rotational grazing is pretty clear. That the animals will eat, they'll eat the most appealing food first and the least appealing food last, and they won't get to that, and they'll eat the appealing food right down to the ground, and they'll eat the roots if you know, don't get them out of there, and that damages the soil. So, and with the phone, you can see where they've been. So, so if you have a 3-acre pasture and you know there's clover and good grass here, they go right there. You can see that. And so you could put them in there for a day and then fence them out of there. And then that comes back fast. Then they have to go over here and eat that. And so they're eating the pasture more uniformly, and that improves the soil health. So I don't think there's it's similar to the water quality. If this works so that a farmer has more capability to manage more effectively, you're going to improve soil health. How we demonstrate that is a good question. So you do a test beginning and the end, but Kimberly doesn't think 2 years is enough, that you're going to get enough tangible evidence of soil improvement.
So, thank you, Mike. You mentioned you're not a big techie guy, and I don't count myself in that group either. So I'm thinking about this and trying to figure it out. If every farm in Vermont was able to get the resources to do this, because it's all from a satellite and down, right? Is there enough room on that satellite to accommodate every single, I don't know how that works. Like, don't signals kind of get crossed over? Or?
Yeah, but this is so minimal.
It is.
Yeah, just an intermittent signal. So, yeah. No, kind of. Yeah, I don't think there's any.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but cows, if it's hot and you've got a wet spot in your field on a real hot day, they want to stand in that wet spot to keep their feet cool, and that keeps their body cool. And I would expect beef cows the same way.
Oh, yeah.
They want to stand in that cool water to cool their body.
I can speak to that for sure. Yeah. We run a few beef cows. So,
Yeah, that's right.
And they invariably go where you don't want them. That's just what they do.
They love water.
Yeah.
And, if you got a brook going through, hot day, they'll stand in the brook.
Sure.
You know what happens then,
I do.
or you can imagine what happens. Now, what about what about the carbon capture?
Yeah.
What's the deal?
So that's again, I think the science is proven that when you improve the management and the soil health, what's included in improved soil health is the carbon capture, not for climate, but carbon capture for soil health, because the carbon is the building block of everything. So the carbon that's the animals stamp what they don't eat, they stamp into the ground, and that's carbon capture. So there is improved. I think the soil health issue looks to be 3 to 5 years. Carbon capture, I think, is in the same, but it's more on the outer edge, 5 years. How are you going to be able to demonstrate this? I think when you begin to document the soil health, the carbon trails in behind that. There is a research project out of Denver now, that is exactly on this point. The virtual fencing is really being adopted by the larger scale beef operations out west, that are thousands of acres, and it's your level. So unlike this is the collar is off the GPS. Those systems are internet based. You put up a broadcaster internet. So it's not cellular based, actually broadband. So, but it works because it's flat and there's no impediment. It won't really work in our neck of the woods, which is why I went with this technology. But there are 2 companies, minimum herd size 500 cows out west. So there are big, and thousands of cows. And there's a woman who did her PhD on this and she's now a postdoc on this. I tried to get her on my board, and she said, get in line. Everybody's trying to get her on their board. But that's what she's doing, carbon capture from virtual fence use.
So what,
So I'm gonna trail in behind her of what she's doing.
so those 500 herd numbers in the Leslie, what did cows out? They pasture 'em?
And no perimeter fence.
Any farm like this, they're always, confined. But now they're wanting them out.
Oh, well, it's like grazing operations like the old West, they're out on 2,000 acres of terrible pasture that's fenced in with barbed wire. And cows don't want to go anywhere, like you said, they kind of stay together and look for water and get fed every once in a while and graze and get brought in and slaughtered. So those are the herds that they're not confinement. No, I got you. They're not the confinement beef.
Oh,
Yeah, they're free range graze
free range grazing beef.
in the West. Yeah.
What about the farm up in Maine? Now you can, of course, capture that right off your phone here in Vermont.
Yeah. So we ran into. So we've kind of gone over what everything went the way it was supposed to. Kimberly and I, that picture I showed you, we installed I went up, helped her and Ben, we installed the collars on 60 animals. It was a day. It's too big. I shouldn't have bit off more than I should have to chew on the first project, but it worked because Ben's really good. He acclimated them in the barnyard. He put them out, took a week, and it went right according to plan. And then, like I said, he managed them really well. We had some trouble we had to bring them back in. And then there's the data that's in the computer that's in there. That's the stored. I'm looking at it in real time. It's recording that. So that's what we got to tease out. So the problem we ran into was that the no fence, the latest version of their collars was designed for 2G and 3G. And the networks have switched over all over the world to 4G and 5G. And they're not just no fence, but GPS-based systems are running into trouble. That the equipment that can accept a 2G signal can't accept a 5G signal. So we were hot off our great success with Ben. Kimberly goes down to the Larson farm in Wells, installs the collars on the cows, hits program, and nothing happened. So at the same time that was happening, it was happening all over the world. No offense, they were having this problem. So I'm all of a sudden in the middle of a much larger tech challenge. Ben's network is 2G, I think, what he's got on his farm. So it didn't bother him. It never showed up. And it took a while to figure out, so our data for no fence that I provided to them helped them figure out what was going on. Because Ben's farm worked, Larson's farm didn't work. What's the disconnect between the 2G, 5G? That's what they started to see as a pattern all over the world. So as a result of that, they've had to shut down their production. So they're in real trouble. But to their credit, they did two things to help me. One, and it wasn't just to help me. They came up with a short-term fix for the collars that they had sold that would allow the collars to accept the 5G signal. They came up with over a 3-month period of time. They came up with a fix. So the collars that I have, I can use this coming summer. And I was able to use some of the collars on a Maine farm right at the end of the growing season to just try it out. So I'll be able to do the 5 farms with those collars this summer. So we should be able to go forward. It's a little bit of patchwork, but it should work. the good thing is it only affects the cattle collars, not the sheep and goat collars. So and I,
What the heck was that?
that's a good question. And I don't know, and they don't really know, but she's very confident that that's the way it is. So we're going forward with the sheep and goats. I have to, keep our eye out, but that's the hope. So tough situation, and it was hard. Walt Whitcomb, the second main farmer that, and really my primary main farmer, he was going to use the collars on 30 grazing non-dairy cows, which is exactly the second group of this. He's farming with his two daughters. They were onto the technology before me. They went to a grazing conference out in Wisconsin the summer before I heard about this, and they were pestering Walt to go in on it. And Walt's like, nah, I'm not doing that. So then I show up, and everybody, it's a happy deal. But Walt said, let's wait till next year. Understandable. So Kimberly went and checked out the farm. It looks really good. So that will be a really good test of the value of the collars for a dairy operation, not in the barn, right? So they do intensive rotation of grazing so that they are feeding their dry cows less grain, so it's a reduced cost, and so that's what their operation is. So it's a good test for that.
Is that the Rich Larson farm in Wells? Is that the one or not? You mentioned Larson.
Yeah, we were only there for a couple days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he didn't ever get to take advantage of it because of the.
That's it. He was really good about it.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So my other question, if it's just like computers where if you buy one today, next year it's kind of almost obsolete because they made it better somehow. Is the same situation going to occur if 5G becomes yesterday's technology?
That's a question I haven't asked expressly. It's the old saw. You fight the last war with your army. You build up your army based on what went on in the past. I would assume they've learned. We have to look forward and see what's coming and make sure we're. But I haven't asked that question, and I should ask that question. That's an absolutely good question.
So I'm asking the question because I haven't got a clue. What's the difference between 2G and 5G?
I think that's.
Why did that all get screwed up and changed?
Yeah.
Is there any explanation?
Unlike when what my training is, I have a depth of knowledge in my training. I don't have the depth of knowledge here, and it's
But
not. If you ask, like I said, you ask about carpentry tools all day. But I'm a boomer, man. I'm a boomer.
Just by numbers, that you would increase your power if you went from 2 to 4, you'd double your.
And I think you are. I think that's what you're doing. I think it's speed, but I'm not. I think it's speed and data, but I'm not really sure. It's efficiency, clearly, right? But they just plow ahead without concern for things like this. I mean, and it's affecting airline. And that is a big problem. And they just plow ahead, and then the plane goes up in the air like the cow, comes back and says, "Oh, I didn't like that." And then they say, "We got a problem, Mildred."
Yeah, my door flew off.
Yeah.
Didn't like that 5G stuff. My door flew off.
Well, to me, it's the same too as like Windows 7, and now that's obsolete because you need Windows 10.
Yeah.
So there's no back filling in kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think I will report back to you on the answer to that question.
Yeah. Okay.
They're a super company. I mean, I'm really impressed with what they've done, and I really, but they clearly got caught with their pants down on this one. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that we're fortunate that we did the pile. So, farmers will will understand, if this works or doesn't work, it's mediocre. And so, I'm glad that we did that.
Yeah.
Because some farms would invest a lot of money and it could be all out the window.
Well,
Yeah.
we're working through the wrinkles. And
Yeah.
I think over the 2 years, we will have worked out the wrinkles, I think. And that's the function of the Institute, is to do that.
Is
Take
there
that.
any other New England states that are trying this?
No, and because they've had to shut down their production, we're gonna be it. Yeah, for 2024. So I made a presentation to the main farm to farm, it's kind of farm conference in December. It's a MOFGA is the equivalent of NOFA. It was a MOFGA, Maine Organic Farmers and Growers Association conference. And their reaction is right similar to yours. Well, this looks like a great idea, but I'm not sure I'm going there until you can show me that
It works.
Yeah. So it looks like it really works, but we've seen a lot of things that really work. So that's
That bugs that the providers of this product has to work out.
yeah. But like I said, checking off the boxes, assuming that the bugs that are this bug, 2G to 5G, that doesn't have anything to do with the collars and the no fence. That's to the GPS system. That's a systemic, exactly. So the pilot, in my opinion, proves out equipped for virtual fencing and rotational grazing. So if they can work out that bigger bug issue, then it's covered.
Now, our growing or grazing season is probably as short as any other state, but there's some states that would have a longer feeding, grazing period.
Yeah.
Now, if the batteries are light duty for us,
Yeah.
they might be double light duty.
That's an issue. Yeah, that's an issue. So whether can't put the collars on beef cows without confining them. Can put the collars on. Larson, they put them on without confining them.
Without,
Dairy cows are more willing to let you come up and hang something around the neck.
yeah,
So if that's the case, then you'll be able to, if you've got your replacement batteries, go out in the field, one at a time, take it off. You're just swapping the battery out. It's like a drill,
is it like
same
that
deal.
type of battery?
Yeah, same deal.
And then at home or on the property,
Right.
you have a charger.
Right. So that would be a beef versus dairy. So we went on the one main farm. So we had the farm that I signed up for DVIC. She lost her help, both help overnight. One found out she was pregnant, decided she was gone, and the other just said, I've had enough, basically the same day. So in about a 10-day period, I went from having a farm down your neck of the woods, Brian. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So we ended up with the Larson farm. Was terrific after 3 or 4 farms. In Maine, the farm, we had Walt's farm and then another farm, the smaller farm. They had, the PFAS issue is becoming a real problem. So their response to the PFAS problem was to buy more milking cows off a farm that didn't have a PFAS problem. And they were going to
You
milk
mean in the soil.
in their home farm. So they were going to milk the non-contaminated herd while they cleaned out the PFAS. But all of a sudden they had a lot more cows in the herd than we had originally planned on. I didn't have enough collars. So I had enough collars, and the farmer Kimberly chewed on it a while and said, let's give it a trial on the nursing cows. So I went out, and that doesn't work. So you've got 5 mamas.
So part of them had collars and.
The mamas have the cows and the calves don't. And the calves go where the calves want to go. and the mamas go where the calves go. And they said electric signal doesn't make any difference. We're going where the calves go. So we learned it doesn't work for. So that was the fall. But you know, it fills out the knowledge base.
Well, it's good to work these bugs out, and so we can tell people, you know, where they work, where they don't work, and
No offense said that's not going to work, you know, for obvious reasons. Well, we'll give it a try. But we tried it in a controlled situation, and everybody was content with the trial, except with the two of the mamas are like, "What are you doing?"
they didn't want to play the game.
Okay, so I got 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So we're pretty far along in the planning to be on the ground, which is what I've really been pushing at. It's my job is to push, and I've been pushing. So we have for on the utility side, I've got Washington Electric and Vermont Electric. Washington Electric, I've got a herder. I've mostly got a management plan in developed and the contracts. So we've got a contract between the utility and the grazer, between the grazer and me. And then some kind of understanding between the utility and me that if this works, we're going to keep the grazer on and have this ongoing so that the experimentation and the investment of time and effort by the grazer, you know, will carry forward, that they won't go out, do it on their own. And, you know, so I'm working that up. So pretty far along with Washington Electric. Vermont Electric, we have the concept down, but I'm not as far along. I'm also trying, since the grazer home base is down Ludlow, which is where Magic Mountain, I'm trying to get in with Ludlow Electric. Right about when I was getting ready to talk to them, they get flooded out last year. You can't catch a break anymore, you know, you just can't. So, but we're moving. On the ski area, I'm even farther along. We've got a fully developed plan. We've got the grazer, got the animals, all within a fairly close. So that project is a go. And Washington Electric, those two are definitely a go. Should go good. So that looks good. So just a couple. This is what it looks like on the goats. And I was going to put a box in. I mean, I get asked. You get asked a lot of questions, but the one question I get asked over and over is, "Do you really think this is going to work with goats?"
Right,
Because what works with
oh,
goats?
goats have a
mind of their own,
Yeah.
But
and it does,
it works,
Look at
and the grazer is totally into this. And she is even
where is
more-
this?
This is in Europe.
Okay,
That's
it's
in
like,
Europe.
yeah, that's great.
And then sheep on the solar. So I think I'm not sure between sheep and goats on the
That's
solar,
on
but
the ski slope there,
no, this is the solar array.
on the left.
Yeah, but that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
It looks like it,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cleared areas now.
I'm you know,
But
better than I look.
doing the solar array is good.
Yeah, and it's so should go. Yeah. I confess I was where we are in Vermont in terms of goats and sheep is a little less. It's a lot less sort of established than I thought. Right? Fewer opportunities with herds, and so it's the complexity of doing this weed management is much greater than just cows out in the field. And I thought there would be more, Kimberly would find more choices, you know, people saying, oh yeah, I really want to do that, you know, I'd be willing to give it a try, but it's not easy, but we're getting it.
And
So that's,
the goats and the sheep, their apparatus is the same size and weight
Smaller.
as the small.
smaller and lighter.
The collar doesn't have to be as big.
So I've watched Amy's herd in operation. You know, when you see, we had goats and it was, oh my gosh. For the 2 months, it was like having a toothache. You know, get up every morning and say, oh no, what's going to happen today? You know, but
Just
watch
everywhere.
Oh gosh,
On top.
the plumber came.
Yeah.
And I'm coming down and the goats are in the back of his truck eating his tools in 15 seconds. You know, it's like, oh man. So, but watching Amy's goats really gives you
Yeah,
the hope. You know,
Yeah.
they're really smart.
They
what
are
do.
smart.
Oh my gosh. And they work in pairs and they climb on each other's backs and eat up high this tree. And then the one who's on the back gets down and goes to this tree, and the other one climbs up the back and eats. It's really something to watch. And so
Maybe you ought to take pictures of that. You could teach us how smart goats are. Taking turns of holding the other up.
it's really something to watch. And you know, so I didn't put the box in. I'm not going to be skeptical at all. It's going to work. It's going to work because Amy's totally into it, and you know that's what makes things go.
Yeah. So all in all, you would rate this as pretty positive.
Absolutely. You know, my summary would be what I said before, that the equipment for what it's designed to do for containing the animals and enabling more efficient rotational grazing with all of the benefits worked. The issue we got is that larger 2G to 5G, which, you know, doesn't really have to do with the function of the equipment. Yeah, off the phone, all of that worked the way better, I would say, even than I expected. Yeah. And confirmed by, you know, Ben. I thought about bringing Ben in, but you know, he's working. So, but he would absolutely. I don't have any issue in representing that he would back up what I've said and even worse. Yeah.
Well, great. Other questions for Dane?
Yeah.
So we're all good for this coming summer.
Yeah.
And then next winter, or sooner, you.
Well, I would like to follow up with you on your water quality issue. I think
Yeah.
that's something we should
Well, if you get some, you know,
toss around a little bit.
yeah, get some facts and numbers, and
Okay.
we'd be glad to
See how that, you know, because that seems like a next step approach, more integrated
Well,
approach. It's not just farming, but it's A&R, and sounds like a good idea.
I mean,
So getting in between the A&R and the agency, I retired from that when I left the council. But
every conversation that comes up is how bad farmers are. You know, from the natural resources folks, and you know, if this thing is working and improves soil health and carbon capture and all that, it would be good to have some numbers.
and yeah, there is literature. So
Yeah.
it's under study.
Yeah, thanks. See you.
Good to see you guys.
Safe drive
Yeah,
back.
thanks a lot, Dan.
That looks safe.
So, we'll shift gears. So we got, Glenn Evans, and, well, welcome to the Ag Committee. And, you could introduce your other guests.
That's great. So, good morning. Morning. Pleased to be here. Glenn Evans, I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Ag and Food Entrepreneurship at Vermont State University. I'm here today with Dr. Demetrius Reed as my colleague. He is our meat processing facility director and has oversight for all of our programming around butchery and meat facility trainings. So I thought it'd be a good chance to come in. I know, did you receive the presentation okay, Linda?
And we'll introduce ourselves while Glenn is looking for that.
Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District. Just in time.
Irene Renner serving to the north.
Brian Kennedy in Bennington County.
And Senator Westman's from up in Moyle County, but he's firing Roofville last night, so he's home after that. And so he won't be with us. I'm sure he'll watch the tape. And I'm Quality Start from Morgan's. Welcome and we'll get started.
Thank you, appreciate it. So,
So yes, I do have it. Would you like me to share now?
if you wouldn't mind, that'd be wonderful.
So are you out of Randolph or?
Yes, yes, Center's based in Randolph. And yeah, so it's a kind of an exciting time. I'm sure you've heard through the past year, a lot of moving and shaking at Vermont State University.
Yeah.
A lot of transition and transformation. And so the center here has kind of been growing through that process. So I think if we could advance to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of an overview about formation, some of what came about that led to the formation of the Center for Ag and Food Entrepreneurship. So then Vermont Technical College was going through some serious challenges with ag programming. There was declining enrollment. It was very challenging from a cost standpoint. There was a large dairy herd that had to be sold. At that time, decisions were made to pause the ag degree program. So these are big changes that are happening. But the story really doesn't end there, right? It was basically a call to action, a chance to transform the types of programming that we were offering and to make a pitch for how we could reinvigorate ag and food programming at Vermont State University. So really the key ingredient in this process has been our Ag Advisory Committee. So this is a group of about nearly 45 individuals that are coming from Vermont industry, coming from Vermont non-for-profits associated with food and agriculture and forestry, and basically asking them to help us figure out how we can transform, how we can create programming that's going to get us to the next platform, continue to meet the workforce needs in Vermont, as well as be attractive for students. So this group came together back in June of 2021. They issued basically a transformation report. And in that report, they had a couple key recommendations. The first was to create the Center for Ag and Food Entrepreneurship. And as part of that, to reimagine our degree programming. So while past programming was very dairy-centric and certainly met a critical niche and need for dairy, as we all know, in the state, we also recognized that we needed to diversify. We needed to be attractive to a broad range of ag and food and forest-related activities in the state. They also charged in basically saying, well, we can expand our programming through investment in partnerships and in the creation of internships that can allow for engagement and direct connections with the industry. This group also came out with a recommendation to expand the diversity of our on-campus enterprises. So to help with this process, this transformation, a lot of funding has been secured. So to date, we have roughly $3 million worth of funding. So we have an EDA grant that's providing 3 years of funding for myself, Demetrius, and a third center position. Excuse me.
Should we mask up?
No, you can thank my children from 3 weeks ago. We have a NEFA grant for some farm and market training improvements, improvements with equipment and forestry. And then we have nearly $1 million in funding that's going towards the renovation of a space for our processing facility. So it's an exciting time. We could advance. Thank you.
And what type of processing are you working in?
For the meat?
Is it for meat?
Yes, yes. So my colleague will go into more detail on some of the offerings that we'll have within that facility.
Yeah.
So just as a snapshot, these are some of the members of our advisory committee. I'm sure you probably recognize some of these individuals, but again, we're very fortunate to pull from their collective expertise in the industry and in terms of just trying to structure something, again, from a subject matter expertise standpoint, as well as what can be attractive, as well as what's really needed in the workforce here in Vermont State. We could advance. Thank you. Okay, so just in terms of a snapshot, so where we are currently with the center. So this center was officially formed under then President Mike Smith, and that was back in June of last year. So I was hired and brought on board at that time. Shortly thereafter, in October, we were fortunate to hire Dr. Demetrius Reed. He's got a background that's extensive in meat science, both in Texas and in North Dakota. So we're very fortunate to have his leadership here with us. And we're in the process of hiring our third position. So this will be a training and internship manager position. So this individual will support our certificate trainings. So these are one-off trainings in a specific subject area like artificial insemination of dairy cattle, welding, organic certification, those sorts of things, as well as our internships and how we'll structure internships to be focused to a certain workforce skill and student interest. We continue to work with that Ag Advisory Committee. We meet quarterly. Currently, they've been charged with providing input back to the center in 6 focus areas. So these include things like our farm facilities and student recruitment, fundraising, the meat facility, and some of our short course offerings. The meat processing facility is a go. So this facility has been earmarked for construction for some time. It was delayed by roughly a year, but we're fortunate. We've got our internal approvals, our budgetary approvals, and it's in design and hopefully in construction here in the first quarter of this year. We continue to work at our farm facilities. I don't know if any of senators have had a chance to see some of the facilities at Vermont State University and the Randolph campus, but we're working there at not only identifying areas for improvement, but also areas for divestment. We recently completed an equipment sale so we can generate some revenue to then reinvest in other areas.
How'd that sale go?
It went fairly well. Yeah, we had identified 6 pieces of larger equipment.
Yeah,
And then as you may be well aware through this optimization process and all of the news that went out about that, our current 4 credit programming in ag, forestry, landscape architecture has been paused. And so we're looking at our process of concept to approval for a new ag associate's degree in ag, food, and forests. And as we go through this process, we're laying a foundation. So we can't do this on our own. We recognize that from a scale and a cost standpoint, as well as from an expertise standpoint. So we want to leverage a number of different private partnerships that we're forming throughout the state to provide an immersive educational experience. Excuse me. So in a nutshell, the Center for Ag and Food Entrepreneurship is really Vermont State University's gateway. Our goal is to do applied skill building within the areas of agriculture, food, and forest systems. So the way we accomplish that is threefold. First, we can create immersive workforce development opportunities, and that's through 2 pathways, through the associate's degree that I mentioned, that is going through an approval process, and it's through a broad suite of these short courses or certificate trainings. Second, we leverage the living lab spaces that we have at the Randolph campus. So this is the land, the facilities, the equipment, and a number of instructors that have been identified. And third, we partner with private businesses. So these are folks that are within the state that are doing things really well at a variety of scales that we can introduce students to, both through on-campus and off-campus experiences, as well as through these facilitated internships. So just as a snapshot to just share some of that living lab space. So this is an aerial of our Randolph campus. And so we're really fortunate. We have over 200 acres of agricultural land around campus. So this is farm and forest land. Some of those fields are nicely set up for pasturing and grazing animals. We have a farm facility complex that includes a number of different buildings in various states and conditions. We have a small maple sugaring operation as well as a sugar bush. We have some forestry equipment, including a milling center. On campus, we have a greenhouse, a facility space that'll be designed for our meat processing facility. And we have an older but still quite functional orchard. So it's a pretty broad range of resources that students that are actively engaged in ag, food, or forest could tap into right in and around campus.
So, what has happened to that property since you folks haven't been actively using it?
It's a wonderful question, Senator. So in the interim, what we did is we put out a request for proposals a while back to have a third party come in and basically lease that space. And the way we structured that is basically I like to think of it more as a partnership than a lease. But basically, in this case, it's Savello's farm. So they came in and they are doing the cropping
Where are they located?
right in Randolph.
Right there.
Yeah. So they basically expanded some of their acreage for their dairy operations. But yes, so they crop that land. They utilize one of the farm facilities for their birthing cows and their dry cows. And as part of that contract, we wrote in basically how anything that's happening in those spaces, whether it's animals, whether it's ag cropping, whether it's the staff activities that are happening, can be built into teaching and educational programs.
So you have some animals on campus.
That's correct.
And what about the maple operation?
So currently that's still being done in-house. We've scaled it back. But again, as I go forward, and I'll explain a little bit, there's opportunities with each of these areas where in some cases they're standalone and we manage and run them directly. But in many cases, there's an opportunity where it's a third-party partnership, where we're partnering with someone who can utilize that space, providing us a very cost-effective way to have activity right around campus, but with a very structured component where it has to be accessible and utilized for the teaching that we do.
And what about the ski area?
So
Does
that,
that still function?
yes, it is. They opened it up prior to the winter break a few times, but
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you mentioned internships a couple times. Is that strictly an undergraduate phenomenon, or are there adults that are already out of the educational system, bringing them back in? And then you also mentioned a private partner, and I'm wondering if you give us an idea of who the private partners are.
Sure. So the internship experience is a 4-credit experience that would be part of the associate's degree. And again, the way we position a degree like that is it's both for folks who are coming through sort of the standard pathways, high school, looking to expand, as well as returning learners, right? So folks who are coming in saying, I want to change careers, I want to value add basically for the skills I have. Okay. So that's how that's positioned, is it's sort of the capstone of that degree program. And the way we position private partnerships is basically working in developing relationships with folks who are doing it right. So Demetrius can share some of the relationships that he's built within the meat processing industry. And of course, you can imagine within dairy, within beef, within vegetable production systems, there's lots of opportunities where we know folks who are doing it well and who have a vested interest in making sure that their workforce needs are met going forward. So for us, we have sort of our localized folks, everything from Silhouettes and Maple and others, and then we can basically expand that radius throughout the state.
So, getting back to the dairy side of things, I don't know, must have been 25 years ago, we set up a 2+2 program where you could go to VTC for 2 years and what has happened is we don't have any, I think the last student is in UVM. And if we can't utilize that program, there's plenty of other places that money's gonna be grabbed onto and sucked away. And so what kind of a program do you see coming to fulfill, say, that need? Because, we're still the largest dairy state in New England. And yet we don't have any ag college to send our young people to. They have to go to New Hampshire, of all places, and learn how to farm in Vermont and moreover to New York. So what do you see happening in that area so that if possible, we could educate our own maybe?
No, that's a well-raised point, Senator. And I think the 2+2 program, the legacy and the intent of that is spectacular. That's the idea that folks can come through the system, get acclimated at then Vermont Technical College, now Vermont State University, and then leapfrog into UVM and build out their suite of skills. That makes sense. And the fact that there's funding to support that, students that want to take that pathway, invaluable. So I think the way we have, unfortunately or fortunately, the way we have to position now is that our scope has been broadened. It includes dairy, as it absolutely must and should, but we don't have the luxury of just focusing on dairy, just knowing our enrollment, knowing our past, and knowing what needs to happen sort of from the academic approval steps, right? Of getting the approval, everybody within Vermont State University feels to say, yes, you can go ahead, you can offer this associate's degree. So I think there's still opportunities within the 2+2 program. But I also feel that there's, to move through that pathway with enough enrollment, we need to certainly include dairy, but also include other sort of working lands skill bases.
See, that and the forestry part, pretty important to my constituents. I can't speak for the other members, but it's kind of bad not having, and we may have to work with you folks and folks from the university to revamp that program somehow to get the scholarships out. But I've been around this building for a lot of years and maybe too many. But I think a lot of that problem was the way our young people were approached to attend our own colleges and the University of New Hampshire and the ones over across the lake did an exceptional job of enhancing and in their advertising and promoting their college. So a lot of the young men and women went elsewhere, and hopefully we can turn that around.
I think that's exactly what we're hoping as well. Recognizing some of those shortcomings, but then trying to position ourselves now to be that. Good examples with our continuing tech ed centers, that are affiliated with the high schools, where in my meetings with those individuals, those students are going right to UNH. I mean, that's basically where they're directing them to go, because we have a vacuum right now. And my goal, the center's goal, and hopefully Vermont State University's goal is to fill that vacuum and to create a program whereby those students who are coming through, who have an interest in dairy science, have an interest in food or forestry, can stay
home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I'm just thinking it'd be great to have these gentlemen to the education committee one afternoon.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's all, we're all tied in together, and that would, I think that would be good. I'm sure Glenn would anytime that you have a chance to sell what you're doing, you take advantage of it, I'm sure.
I prefer education over sell, but yeah,
Over what?
over sales.
Over
Sell.
sales, over
Yeah.
sales, right, yeah.
But yes, I'm not a good salesman.
So, what other questions from? No, now, the beef and meat thing, you're in the process of setting that up. So when, like for meat cutters and packers and all that.
Right. So I'll let Dr. Reed share more about that in a minute, since that's a fairly extensive facility and suite of offerings that we'll have in and of itself. And then I think, excuse me, tying that into what's happening in the farm facilities. So for example, right now we're exploring some partnerships. One is with Vermont Cattlemen's Association. The other is with the Northeast Grass-Fed Beef Initiative, where they're looking at the pasturing. So there's opportunities there where we're basically creating a cycle where we have activities around raising, and we have all of our processing that's happening at the facility, and then we even have our dining facilities where they're able to take receipt of that. We talk to them about sort of completing that circle.
What about, is there any young people or farmers that are interested in like leasing a dairy barn for dairy purposes?
Potentially. I think what we have now with Savellos is sort of filling the dairy barn piece, at least from our facility standpoint. But we do have additional facility space that can go for beef, potentially other animal raising activities, and of course our maple sugaring.
Because if you don't utilize that space, you know, the next thing is, well, got an opportunity to sell that 50 acres over here, that 100 over here. Well, it already happened when.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's an internal pressure, because right now internally, they're going through what they call master planning, right? Which is looking at space utilization from a land as well as facilities perspective. And so that also ties into making the case now that says we need this, and these partnerships that say, well, once it's gone, it's gone. But if we have a partnership where the cost is neutral or even cost beneficial, then why would you sell?
On the beef thing, as you were coming in, we were wrapping up with the virtual fencing.
Right.
It's, well, that, because if you haven't had beef, must be you're gonna have, if you do have beef, you're gonna have to move them. And the big cost in doing beef and moving them is the time of the fencing and the cost of fencing and that. And that's why last year we set up this pilot program with Dean Smith to develop this virtual fencing that you run from your phone.
Right.
So maybe you should keep that in mind if you get to the beef part of it, where you gotta move your animals, or whoever's looking after it has to move their animals. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Glenn, I want to go back to the 2+2. Is it more of a financial barrier that we now face to keep that going, or was that just a policy decision made?
So I guess several perspectives. One is the current barrier to that is that we have our ag programming on pause, right? So we need to be able at Vermont State University to have an ag degree pathway that students can do that first 2 years at Vermont State University and then jump, leapfrog to UVM from that point forward. So that's the one barrier right now.
But was that pause, did that pause come about because of a financial impact, or was it just, we're not gonna do ag anymore?
No, it was completely, I would say, 99% financial.
Okay.
This is through the optimization report. They look at enrollment, they look at cost per programming, had metrics and they determined that this was not.
There was a
Solve it.
personnel issue there too, wasn't
Yes, I mean, the whole process of transformation has involved staffing reductions, faculty reductions, and program reductions. So you take all that, you do all that in 6 months, throw some leadership changes in there, throw some other curveballs in there, and it's a tough climate.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to, and I apologize for stepping out, but so what's happening right now, following up on Senator Collmore's, is that you can do the 2 years, Vermont State College system, Vermont State University, but it's not going to UVM? Can you just clarify what's happening there?
So all of our ag and forestry program is currently paused.
All of it.
So we can't complete, we can't be part of the 2+2 program if we have no program, right? So I think that's our
it?
big.
We put,
Yep.
I mean, we come up with the money for 2+2. And we've been still putting that money in. So there's a nest egg of money that's been built up. And hopefully waiting for BTC or Vermont State University to get that program back up and running. And in the meantime, expanding the participants' areas of education so that they would qualify, because when we set that up years ago, it was basically set up for dairy. And so we're gonna have to revamp that program so that it still does dairy, but it also includes maybe manufacturing or some of these other areas in agriculture that these students can transfer to UVM, and they have the expertise to continue along with it. And so there's another crew that's looking at trying to design programs to accommodate both Randolph and UVM in subject matter so that you can move from one school to the other and be on the same plane, you might say, as far as learning goes. And, you know, there's been over 100 graduates from that program that are pretty much all employed in the banking industry, in the manufacturing industry, ag, in the feed industry, as well as going home and taking over the dairy farm and doing that. And, you know, you talk with, I mean, in the off season, I get invited to a lot of different meetings, and the feed dealers and even Vita and that crew, you know, they like these students because they have ag loans that they need somebody that can understand, you know, the good from the bad to be able to okay these loans. And the feed dealers, you know, are looking for people. The meat industry, I'm glad that you're here with us. And I mean, they're looking for butchers, you know, people that can go in Hannaford's and those places. They need meat people to run their meat department. And so, you know, you've got a heavy lift down there to get that up and going before somebody grabs our money and runs. Because the tighter the state budget gets, they'll be turning over every rock and stone they can find to grab the money. So, okay.
No, understood. And I think, so that's sort of that near-term strategy of finding ways to spend it, which may be outside of Vermont State University.
Oh, definitely.
And then as we get things going, to be able to reinvigorate.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the support with that 2+2 program. I think, again, when we look at it from an enrollment standpoint, it's just a really nice carrot to offer students.
It would be good. I mean, you're people that are trying to get students to go to, they must be working right now, I would hope. And,
You mean like the admissions folks,
yeah, for next year,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they should be
on the
running their shoes off, trying to get young people signed up. And you'll start next fall or
So-
fall of 24?
So what we have is a program that's going through an approval process. The academic approval process of the faculty approving it, they approving the courses, approving the degree pathway, approving our case analysis, which is no easy task. But we're going through that with the hope that in academic year 25, we can offer this associate's.
So we can't get students to go next fall.
Correct.
That's a bummer. But I know what you're talking about, getting accredited. And,
Right.
I mean, if you don't have meet certain goals, you're not going to get accredited. So
The process is lengthy. Well, let me keep going. I'll share a little bit more information.
Yep.
And then turn it over to my colleague. But just so quick snapshot about the degree program that we hope to offer and what's different about it. So in the past, again, very much workforce focused, but it was fairly narrow. We had fixed programming and it didn't evolve much over time. And again, our target audience,
You guys have cards?
not with
Cards.
money. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
yeah,
Thanks, Dan.
And again, the target audience was Vermont farm kids. While that's absolutely a critical audience, it's hard to stand up a program these days with that as your primary. So where we're trying to position in terms of future growth is we're continuing to focus on workforce ready skills, but employing what I call a funnel approach. And I'll share more about that in a moment. But basically exposing students to a wide range of skills in ag, food, and forests, and then focusing them over the 2-year period to specific workforce outcomes. We need to continue to evolve our programming. We can't just make large investments and sit on those for decades. We have to pivot, right? As new things come in, new technologies come in, we need to be more responsive in our programming. And finally, in terms of our target market, we're no longer specifically focused on Vermont. To be successful, we need to attract folks within the region, right? From out the Northeast who are saying, this is a strong offering, this is a strong education, and I will come to Vermont and I will get that farm and food-based education. And this includes students who may not have immediate farm experience, right? They may know they like to raise animals, or they like to grow plants, but that may be the end of it. And so that's the challenge we have, is to take that and build a workforce skill out of that. Okay, we can go forward. So just a little bit, I mentioned this idea of partnerships, and I know some of the questions I think it answered a little bit of what's on this slide, but really that's one of the cornerstones for both creating an immersive educational experience and for doing it sustainably in terms of meeting sort of the cost restrictions and requirements that we have within the university. So there's different partnership levels, right? There's the on-campus partnerships, and I mentioned the example with Savella's Farm and some of the other potential partnerships that we could do in terms of beef, both grass-fed and barn-raised beef. Our maple operation, we have vegetable and orchard-based operations. So all of this are potential for on-campus partnerships. We also have our off-campus private partnerships. So this takes several different forms. In one case, this is making connections within industry where we can take students and immerse them, go to a multi-million-dollar dairy, go to a state-of-the-art facility for distilling or brewing, but being able to expose them to spaces that we couldn't create on our own. And that happens through labs, happens through tours. And as they focus their interests, it happens through these focused for-credit internship experiences. And then lastly, we're looking at how we structure what we call our enterprises. These are the activities we do that have a teaching function, but have also historically had other functions in terms of revenue offsets, and really trying to scale those more appropriately to specifically meet the teaching need as opposed to those other interests. So I had mentioned this idea of a funnel approach and trying to direct students into a single ag, food, and forest degree. And basically the way this concept works is over a 2-year period, we're initially getting students and it's immersion, right? They're getting exposed to all sorts of things. They're going out, there's tours, there's labs, there's various levels of exposure with ag, food, and forest systems. In that first year, the students are being mentored and advised so that they're defining their core area of interest. What is it that they're passionate about? What is it that they're skilled in, right? And from that, we're building out internship experiences that are tailored to that student, right? So that is as the capstone. Now they're immersed in that, we focused into a deliverable, and that the outcome is that in a 2-year period, we've got workforce ready graduates. We have someone who has honed in skills, has a broad range of exposure, and hopefully through the internship and private partnership model has industry contacts, right? Has folks that they know that they can reach out to and hit the ground running.
So how many different, I mean, you can't spread yourself too thin. So have you got some kind of an idea of how many students you need in these different categories to be able to educate them, or is there a magic number of this much or this many?
That's a good question. So there's internal targets within the university. So any program needs to have a minimum of 25 students enrolled annually. Our projections with this to date are in the 60 to 75 enrollment range. And that's just based off of sort of market demand.
Well, yeah,
And projections that as we expand the scope of a degree, hopefully we're expanding interest.
Yeah.
So we're casting a wider net, hoping to attract more students.
well, if you had from 60 to 80 students, that would,
Absolutely. So that really positions us well. And it's a revolving wheel. As we get students in the door, that helps foster an interest and awareness for the next generation. And hopefully they're having a great experience.
I mean, since we started the 2+2, I mean, we really pushed value-added products, you know, from the legislature to our ag community. And, you know, that has really grown a lot. And like Cabot Cheese used to be a nice little company. Well, you know, they ship cross country, maybe even export. So, and I noticed last week or the week before, they shut down 2 lines of their cheese making it because they didn't have enough help and to keep it all going. And so when they do something like that, that means they don't need quite as much milk if they aren't making cheese. So then the price of milk drops because they don't need it. I mean, it's really important that we get your place going.
Thank you. I agree. So let me just keep moving so I can get through just a couple more slides. So just in terms of marketability, right, we're trying to position what we're offering to be distinct and different from what else is out there. So as you can imagine, we've looked at a lot of other peer institutions, 28 different ones. Our closest comparables obviously are outside the state. In terms of demand, we're looking at demand from 2 directions. One is the demand within the farm and food sector. In terms of employment numbers, you can see over 64,000, but also demand from the student interest and trying to work with our continuing tech ed centers We have, for example, over 600 students right now in ag and natural resource courses in Vermont State alone. And if we look regionally, you can imagine that number grows exponentially. And then finally, trying to position, again, dynamic. We know that Vermont State is dynamic, right? We have a tremendous offering when it comes to the farm and food and forest industries, right? So we can capitalize on that through these private partnerships and through this sort of experiential learning model, whether we're getting that direct exposure. So just to sum up for my piece in terms of what's next here at the center. So in terms of different actions, so first quarter this year, we hope to hire a training and internship manager. That position's on board. That'll allow us to expand these certificate trainings that we offer and to expand those and to do a better job promoting those. Hopefully by the third quarter of this year, our meat processing facility will open, right? So once that happens, we can immediately start supporting these in-demand trainings, as well as build out some of the future coursework that would be part of the associate's degree. We've got plenty of work to do with marketing and outreach. As you can imagine, through a transformation process, there's a lot of updates that are necessary, right? Everything from websites and social media, re-engaging with alumni, rebuilding some of the relationships within our CTE centers. We actively host FFA, other organizations, promoting awareness of what we're offering through conferences with the Agency of Ag, and of course with Farm to Plate and other industry partners that we have. And finally, as I mentioned, our goal here is with this single track associate's degree. And so working through that process, it's a cumbersome and lengthy one, but it has to happen. And so working through that process to get approval and positioning it through this funnel model and private partnerships so that we can make a strong case. So with that, I want to shift gears and I'm certainly entertaining any more questions, but give my colleague here a few minutes to share more about the meat facility.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just curious, what's the total enrollment right now at Vermont State University?
I do not know that number offhand.
You mean at Randolph?
No, I mean,
Across.
university-wide.
Yes. Yeah, it's a
Is
great
that number
question.
down?
I tried to reflect back to some, I know when then President Mike Smith was there, and so they were looking at the fall enrollment. I think they were pleased. I think it was down, but on par with other institutions.
It's working its way back up.
Well, it's suffered through some pretty disastrous decisions along the way.
Yes.
Saying in the fall of
In my opinion,
2022.
12,000?
No, 1,500 fall of 2022.
1,500 across all the
Oh, that's
campuses?
what it says, Vermont State University. Yeah, so I didn't let me check.
Boy,
I mean, you're a Catholic. Oh, now that's can't be right. Yes.
No, that,
That's right.
well, that wasn't that during
No,
the
here we-
pandemic?
Well, that could be also, because here we go. Vermont State University meets targeted enrollment projections for new and returning students. I think it's somewhere around 5,000 according to this. I'll send this
We
to
were in bad shape there. Well, and we have less children, less graduates. You know, our high school's built for 1,400 and we got 8. And,
that's true statewide.
you know, and
yeah, it's only 1,400 new undergraduate students who are welcome.
Do you want me to
Yeah.
take the slideshow down?
No, it should continue.
Anyway, I just,
so,
Yeah.
was curious.
well, welcome and good morning.
Good morning.
Good, how are you?
You can go to the next slide. The next one as well. So I'm gonna give the progress and updates on the meat processing facility. That's gonna be located at BTSU Randolph campus. So far, we have been given the green light to move further into the design and construction bids. During December, we met with the assistant VP for the campus operation to answer any concerns about the design and the budget as well. We went through the budget with the CFO for the university system, as well as
with Glenn and myself looking at where we could refocus some of the money allocation to make sure that it's not just efficient, but it's also a actual processing facility that could be mimicked in the industry. In January 2024, just last week, we met with the architects, the mechanical engineer, the electrical engineer, and we also addressed some of their structural, functional aspects of the processing floor. And we really worked through it really nicely and easily to where I think it will be a premier processing facility in the state. We also received quotes from Ultrasource, which is outside in Indiana, for purchase of large equipment purchases, as well as startup supplies, simple things like frocks, hard hats, lugs, anything that we need. The larger equipment, actually doing a smokehouse that can do up to 60 bellies at a time, and they can do those bellies in 12 hours. So making bacon. It can do up to 100 hams. It can do almost 200 pounds of jerky and numerous other things in that smokehouse. And it's can be equivalent to what you would see in a small processing plant. But then you can also see that where you might see it at Vermont Packing House or Granite State Packing in New Hampshire.
Students would learn how to run that smokehouse.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is my only goal, is to make sure that they know how to run it. And to make, right now I have students that I used to teach at Texas, and they make their own recipes. So it's programming that goes on the smokehouse where they can make their own recipe. They can put in their own stages for cooking, stages for smoking, stages for washing, to make hot dogs, to make sausage. And so it's not just where you learn the norms of the industry, but you can create your own as well. And then we're looking at doing a grant submission to the Vermont Agency of Ag in February to obtain more grant money to retrofit the facility with equipment that is going to be very essential in the next 10 years of meat processing.
How big a processing facility are you planning on having?
So this one is running close to about 3,500 square feet. It's small compared to SUNY. Hope you're saying Cobleskill.
Yeah.
They have a slaughter side as well as a processing side. We only have a processing side. We did have this conversation with our ag committee that was going to be a concern. Slaughter is slaughter. It hasn't changed in the last 100 years. It's not going to change anymore. We've figured out what it is, and so doing that on farm, we could show students exactly what they would need to do for slaughter side. What is really changing is the food science on the processing side, the further process. The ability to, well, we just had 6 recalls this last Christmas on beef, on pork, on further processed meats. And so we really need to teach students the food science and the chemistry side of it. Anybody that goes hunting or who hasn't gone hunting, once you learn it the first 2 times, it's pretty much
How to slaughter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we want to really focus on our value added cuts, and then also showing them how to break down a carcass, because most people don't break down a carcass anymore. You go to stores like Hannaford's or Costco or Sam's, they're not buying carcasses, they're buying boxed beef. And so we wanted to show students what they can do with the carcass, but then also what they can do with the boxed beef as well, because it's not going away, but it is what is happening in this state, which that's why I kind of really fell in love with Vermont, is other states around in the New England area, have been buying boxed beef for the last 23 years, whereas Vermont has kind of stayed that niche market of buying halves, quarters, and sending those to the small butcher shops and then selling them. some of those things that we used to have in my hometown, we don't have that anymore. Where here, I can go in Rutland, I can go to Randolph, I can go to Royalton, and they do the same thing that they had in my hometown. So it's a real cool dynamic to see that agriculture here in this state is changing, but it's changing slow enough to where it is positive for students to be able to stay in the state and profit from it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you go to Walmart, I go occasionally in Derby, their meat all comes in packaged. You know, they don't cut a thing up there. So all the meat man does is set it in the cooler in the right spot. You know, it's, and, you know, cutting meat is, you know, it's a real art. And it's hard to find meat cutters and so it's good that, when are you guys, your program start, the same in 25 or?
So the associate's degree would go in at the same time as Glenn, and so it wouldn't be just a meat focus, but it would be diversified enough. I have seen where universities have been a lot of focus to where that's what causes students to kind of not come to the university. When I went to my university for undergrad, I chose it because they didn't have such a focused program. It was diversified enough to where I could do agronomy, I could do horticulture, I could do agriculture engineering, I could do animal science. And so it was able to get me more well-rounded for our family's operation, because no operation is just focused on animal science, because my great-grandfather taught me how to do blacksmithing. I had to know how to weld. I had to know how to change an engine in the car. And so that school opportunity gave me more of a well-rounded and rather than a focus to where I could work with our family's operation. Where if I went to Texas A&M, it's not so much. Was very focused on one pinpoint area. They had numerous degrees. They had many students in it. But if I say didn't get the welding aspect of it, and when I went home and I had to fix our pipe fencing, I had to contract that out. That's more money going out the operation and less going into our actual families, animals, take care of our families. So I think that Vermont State University in Randolph has a unique opportunity to be diversified enough to where we still have the dairy aspect. They also have the food aspect. So now when you're at your dairy, you're not worried about the market price, because you can now make your own cheese, sell your own milk, make your own yogurt. We want your dairy business to be not just from cow to tank to truck to the store. We wanted to make sure that it goes from your cow to your tank to your bottle to your store to your community.
No. That, and how long a program are you gonna have? Because you're gonna take, I think, students in like part-time. They can run through the meat cutting program, just that for.
Right, so there's what we call our certificate trainings, or our short courses. So those are standalone, they're not credit bearing.
Yeah.
But that's where they can come in, and I know you've got a list of those we can share, but that's focused and tailored. So regardless of the startup time of our associate's degree, as soon as this facility's up and running, those programs come into effect. Even now, in the absence of that, Demetrius has partnered with some local butcheries so that those can continue to go.
So, and how long a program is that?
So
Like 10 weeks or?
the certificate is 2 days. So looking at the people that we collected the data from, we've had people come as far as Maine from the north, as far as Ohio to the west, and as far as south as South Carolina. A young lady came up on the last port from South Carolina, and it was a 2-day intensive course. What it kind of does is takes your YouTube education. and put it into a real hands-on. And so a lot of the people that we're actually teaching in those 2 days have homesteads. They have families. They're coming to learn the quicker way to break down certain tribals. So we want to extend it to a longer week, an 8-week program. There is a Western meat school at Oregon State. I want Vermont State University to become the Eastern meat school. There is no school that's going to be focused on the Eastern Seaboard, but ours to focus on breaking down from half all the way down to your retail pets. We focus on right now the homesteaders, those that are wanting to do sausage, they want to make snack sticks, jerky right now. But we want to make sure that we are also filling the workforce for small processors like Royalton Butcher, for Roma Butchery, for the Vermont State Packing. Granted, state packing is in New Hampshire. They sit right on the border, and fortunate for us, New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire doesn't supply them enough workforce. So they're sending their students to us. We've gotten over a dozen emails, and most of those are coming from New Hampshire side to come to our school to have their students learn how to butcher and how to cut so then they can go back over there. But it is a market that I'm looking beyond Vermont. I'm looking at it as Blaine has said, a regional aspect. New England could be the turning point to where they can stay in the niche market of the local butcher. And
Well, we're trying to promote a local ground beef too. I mean, quite a few of our dairies have switched over to beef. And, you know, our population at 600,000 can only eat so many pounds of beef. So we're looking to transport that to southern New England and New York and along the seacoast. And it's rolling along pretty well, I would say. So it's, now we're going to train the guys to cut it.
yes, sir. We can move to the next slide.
I apologize, we're gonna need to leave very shortly, we're a little over, we have to be with the house. But we could just
You're upstairs too,
upstairs, yes.
at 11.
So this is
Yes.
the processing facility. It's one continuous flowing room with tables, a walk-in cooler, a smoker. AVs have TVs, will have speakers, microphones, and then it also has a wash area and a mechanical room to where we can keep the room hopefully at a nice 40 degrees all year round, so we can be able to process all the meat. Yes, sir.
Glenn, if you wanted to go up so they'll know you're coming,
I'll head up just,
not run away on you.
I can, yeah,
We'll send him up right
okay, that sounds good, are you okay with that then? Okay, all right, very good. I'll meet you up there.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
Senator
Glenn.
Linda, I
Thanks.
appreciate your
See
time.
you.
Good luck to you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
A lot of hard work and a little luck from me.
That's the hope.
Can you go to the next slide? So our current classes certificates that we offer, I say classes, sorry. Certificates that we provide, we do poultry with small ruminants. So that day, we start off with lamb and goat, or lamb or goat. And then we do the second day with poultry, break it down, chicken, turkey, as well as showing them how to dress wild game as well. We do also pork and beef, and so we do a half pork. And then right now, due to the limitation of where we're located at, we're using Roma's Butchery in Royalton, and she has a small facility, but we're either using a chuck, the forequarter, or using the hindquarter. Last 2 times we did the forequarter, just because it was just a lot easier to work with. The hindquarter was very lean and very dried out. So we just stuck with the chuck area.
So do you have people there that teach students how to do all this?
So right now, we have no students that we can teach. These are just adults that are wanting to do continued education.
Yeah.
Once we have the associate's degree, or really even when we have the meat processing plant up, we will offer it to students on campus. It would be more or less like a extracurricular activity for them to come over and learn how to cut up meat. The easiest and simple class that I would offer is sausage making. So that kind of dips their foot in the water. It's one class where you get to make something, cook it, and get to eat. So
That's cute.
my grandmother always said the key to a man's heart is through his stomach. Not so much. It's really just making it interesting enough. And the way you do that is you engage them into the act of what they're doing. If they can see the end product and see how it affects the community and the consumer, then you kind of pull them in a little bit easier. A lot of other degrees don't give you that opportunity. You can be an architectural degree major, but they're not going to let you design a building and then see that building actually come to fruition until you get hired and you have a few years under your belt. Where in the meat sector, we have the opportunity to give you that kind of free range of invention and ingenuity to do that.
So you're running the meat cutters
Yes.
program right
Yes,
now?
sir.
So Demetrius, what, if I got one of those certificates, you mentioned it's a continuing education phenomenon right now, what does that get me? Do I get, if I'm working already as a butcher, does that get me like more money maybe? Or does it open the door for me to get into that industry?
Right now, we're working with the American Meat Science Association to kind of more add a robust backing to it, to make sure that it may be accepted over. If you want to go to work somewhere, then they'll know, all right, they took in this class.
So it gives you some credentialing.
Yes.
Yes.
But even when I had undergrad students who came from other universities to come work at our meat lab at North Dakota State. Yeah, I know you worked at this lab, but I still re-educate, recertify, make sure I go through the processes of what we do in our lab, because sometimes what someone does at Penn State, they don't do at SUNY Coast. And everybody's more or less adapted to the USDA. And that's our biggest hurdle, because no inspector here is the same as the inspector up here.
Okay.
You always have to deal with different personalities, characteristics. So that's where this kind of certificate really comes in, and we let the students know that you are pretty much in control. Because USDA may say something, but they need to follow also the law. And sometimes they don't. They just do it based personality, because there's not many of them out there, and the USDA that have been able to hire as many. So there is that aspect of, if we get them trained, they can actually go into inspecting as well.
Thanks.
Yes.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. We as politicians often say that we make sausage, but not the same kind you are. If we wanted to take a weekend course, would you be able to train people who have no meat experience, or is this strictly for people who are already in the industry?
No experience at all.
None necessary.
None.
And is there lodging provided, say overnight or something like that? I think it would be a great field trip. We
So
can all go make sausage.
right now, we're the
Not available that
university.
weekend, but I'll look for it.
The Campion Farm wouldn't be okay.
The university does have a farmhouse.
Okay.
And we're putting in grants right now with the Historical Society to remodel that. It has 6 bedrooms. I am pushing, and Glenn has been a very huge support of making that a housing facility for our short courses.
So right now people commute, or they have to stay at like a hotel?
Right now they're staying in hotels. We had one guy bring an RV from Maine,
Oh my gosh.
and he was able to park it across
That's
from
great, actually.
Lone Richard.
That'd be one for you.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, no,
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't wanna keep you from,
no, I got one more.
Oh, okay.
I'll be done.
Yeah.
So this year we added 4 new courses. We're adding the intro to butchery, which is we're taking a tour of the processing plants here in the state, as well as going over HACCP plans. And once the students go through the HACCP program, they'll be able to log on to the international HACCP accreditation website, take the test, and then they'll get a certificate from the International HACCP committee, and that lasts for up to 6 years, and you just have to retake that test every 6 years. But that certifies you across the country and in the EU that you are HACCP certified. I'm texting. You know this, but I brought barbecue to Vermont, so I'm gonna teach barbecue class in Vermont. It's a 1-day class. At the end of the day, there's a full spread barbecue dinner. So we'll talk about cuts of meat. We'll talk about umami taste and the mouthfeel of meat from your ground to your emulsified to your whole muscle cuts, as well as different ways of cultural barbecue from Brazil to Cuba to even Taiwan. So I had the fortunate to visit Taiwan in 2017, and one of my best friends, and we became roommates at North Dakota State. His dad is a scientist in Taiwan, and learned about barbecue in Taiwan. We will be introducing the sausage and curing meats, and then also charcuterie. I think that's it. Oh, and we actually came up with a name, and so it's going to be called the Butcher Block 1866. So that was the year Vermont Tech was actually.
yeah. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, that was interesting and
Very helpful.
good. Yeah. So do you know your way up?
I do not, but I think there's an elevator and there's some stairs as well.
Yeah.
Third floor.
Third floor of the
Third floor,
elevator.
first floor of the elevator.
And it's the, you go down the hallway, it's the last room on the left.
Yes, that might be the best way to come.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
I mean,
you.
excuse me, on the
On the
right.
right, last
one on the
right. 49?
Dyslexia.
Is it 49?
49.
I thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
doctor.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Doctor.
very good.
Very exciting.
Nice meeting you all.
Yeah, good
Same
meeting
here.
you. I'm sure we'll see you again.
So that wraps up our Cuomo discussion. Are there any comments on where we're maybe headed and how we think we're getting there? Or?
I thought this was really helpful. Really gives us a
Frontal light.
good look into what's also some of the challenges that they're dealing with on the ground with the state universities.
Yeah, and it'd be good to get.
Yeah, I think so too.
Evans and their ed. And, cause I don't know what went on. Somebody dropped the ball pretty hard. They weren't out selling their product, so they didn't get the students. It's,
The certificate programs seem to me like the way of the future. So many things, everybody's doing.
Yeah, as long as there's some benefit
As long as
and
there's some benefit.
credibility
Yeah,
to it.
right, right,
at the end.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have my own personal feelings about the merger and the subsequent,
Product.
yeah, and it's caused angst in a lot of communities, so.
Oh, golly.
But I understand what you're saying too, Mr. Chair. We didn't, at one point, we didn't realize that talking so much about some of the bad stuff that seemed to be happening didn't get filtered out and say, well, why would anybody want to come here? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were our own worst enemy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The decision.
Well, we didn't pay. Whoever was in charge wasn't paying attention. You get on some boards and I was on the state college. I mean, when we had our meetings, we had meetings. And when I first went on, the big deal was to hurry up and get through so you could go out to eat on the state college's dime.
Are we still on?
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to,
Shame.
before yeah,
Uh,
I worried about you.
I put a stop to that. I said, I didn't get a check for my meal. I said, oh, I get my check.
Yeah.
And, oh, that'll be picked up by the state college system. The next meeting, we had kind of a bad discussion in regards to that. But anyways, that was like 30 years ago.
Who was chancellor?
Bob, we had a good one down at BTC, president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were thriving.
Oh, yeah.
Well, again, I think as the chair pointed out correctly, I don't know why it came as such a surprise to people that we've got a population at the high school that is continuing to go down and down and down. There are fewer students every year.
Right.
For some reason, it still costs us more money. I haven't figured that one out yet. So why would it not be logical that there would be fewer people available to go to the next level up at a college?
Right, well,
Or-
even out of state, when Cuomo made, Castleton used to pull from all this. But when Cuomo made Hudson Valley Community College free, people said, I'm not gonna go and pay X, Y, and Z. Maybe 2 years later I'll go. But, you're looking at your wallet.
Yeah, when you,
So the news was there, if you just read it. You had to get ready for fewer students
Yeah.
or find a way to find people that you're not attracting already.
But I agree with Bobby. I mean, I'm hoping the chancellor will come into our committee and say they've hired a great admissions team and a great advancement development team, because that's.
because in business, you're constantly nowadays changing.
Yeah.
And you have to change your plan. Well, my uncle, when he was in charge of the green trucks, he basically worked for Weyerhaeuser Company and Columbia Forest Products. And I mean, did that for 40 years. Well, when I came along, and he got along fine, when I came along, I had a mortgage to pay, and along with all the other responsibilities, so I needed to grow that business. And living right on the Canadian border, said, well, it's crazy not to go north.
Right.
So I moved north and picked up Commonwealth, plywood and veneer, and which owned like 8 or 10 mills. I went north and developed more business to go with the old business. And now, if you go through Hancock at all, Weyerhaeuser just brush growing up there. And, I would have been sitting on my thumb in bad shape if I hadn't, moved forward and moved north. Well, anyways, that wraps us up for today. And